Welcome to the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Andy.
And it's a little bit of a solemn episode today,
Yeah.
Andy. This is not our usual time to get together and record, but events happened that compelled us to get together and talk. And that event, sadly, 2 days ago, the actor Val Kilmer passed away.
Yeah.
It was not a huge surprise because he had been battling cancer, throat cancer, for a number of years. And actually, that's not what ultimately caused his demise. It's what you would assume when you see that, but it was pneumonia. I'm assuming somebody who's been through as much as he had probably doesn't have the immune system to fight off pneumonia. And Val Kilmer passed away. I had mentioned before on this podcast, for those who are, of course, avid listeners of this podcast, that throughout my life, I can clearly identify 4 people who have been like, that's my guy throughout my life in different stages of my life. So like my first guy, I think, was Sylvester Stallone. Just being Rocky as a little kid, I think that was my guy. As an older teenager, it was Adam Sandler. You know, Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, all those things. And then Brad Pitt has kind of been my long-running guy for a while. Yeah. But between Stallone and Sandler, for probably the stretch in the age that I was most impressionable, my guy was Val Kilmer. Yeah. And Tombstone was the movie that I wore out the VH cassette. Yeah. Probably the movie I watched the most in my life. Yeah. For the longest time, it was always what I said is my favorite movie. Of course, listeners to the podcast now know I say The Social Network. Honestly, the reason is probably just I've only got so much bandwidth and ability to watch and appreciate Tombstone, and I matched it over like a 20-year period. And it was like something else just had to come in. But, so when the news broke, it hit me kind of disproportionately bigger than I would expect for somebody who's, again, not that somebody I know, obviously, but also somebody who's not been a major part of even my movie fandom for a while now. Yeah. And yet when news that he broke that he passed away, it just it hit me hard because I realized his portrayal of Doc Holliday is still, I think, my favorite movie performance of all time. Nice. I think if I had to rank them and list them, I think that's number one for
that's
just
awesome.
Talking about the things that I like in a movie and in characters. He just had all of them. I like the competent guy. He's kind of the coolest guy in the room. He's hilarious. He's got the greatest quips. He's also a flawed character. He's a very broken human, and he gives a couple of lines and a couple of speeches that are very heartfelt. And I rewatched Tombstone this afternoon. Nice. Did I have to rewatch it? Of course not, because I could project it in my mind, but I just had to rewatch it. And I will admit to you that it got to the scene of Doc Holliday's final scene right before he passes away. Yeah. And I got really emotional. Yeah. The meta-ness of it, of going, he's actually just passed away. Yeah. And I'm watching his character pass away and the tears and him, telling Wyatt Earp, there's no normal life. There's just life. Now get out there and live for me. Yeah. And then ask him to leave. And I was choking up. Yeah. I was like, this is
good stuff.
This is brutal. Yeah. But it's, but also
good stuff as far, his performance. It's unbelievable.
It's brutal, but beautiful at the same time. Yeah. Let's say it's the wonderful thing about what we appreciate in movies and art is that is going to live on.
It'll live forever.
I can always go back and revisit him as Doc Holliday anytime that I want. And, so I was like, we got to get together and I got to talk about this guy. I've got to pay tribute to somebody who is so important to my movie fandom.
Glad to do it.
Yeah. So I could probably just keep going on and on, but I want to hear a little bit from you, Andy, your relationship and thoughts on Val Kilmer.
I don't want to do the thing where just because someone passes away, then all of a sudden I'm like, I was his number one fan. Yeah. But, you talk about, when you're listing your favorite things, and you talked about, jumping on board with, was it Sandler or whoever, when you were the most impressionable. And I do think when you are young and impressionable, the things that you like really do stick with you. So when I grew up in the HBO era. We didn't have access to what we we do now. So if you caught a good movie or you discover a movie that you liked, it was a treat if it was oh my gosh, it's on. So I actually grew up in the early Kilmer era of Top Secret and Real Genius. Yeah. Just two really enjoyable, really 80s movies that were on all the time on HBO. And I just always liked watching both those movies. And then along comes Top Gun. So it's you're oh man, I think probably at the time, because I was pretty young, I was like, I hate this guy because he does such a great job of being a jerk in Top Gun. He does he bites his teeth, and you're just like, oh, I just want to punch this guy. As I get older, though, as I become an older movie fan, you're like, well, he's just doing a really good job because you're supposed to not like him for a large part of Top Gun. So, that's kind of my thing. I never was like, this guy is my favorite, but it was just like, this guy's just in movies that I like. And then Willow comes out. Like, I was young enough, I saw Willow in the theater, and it's kind of this
it's amazing
magical type thing. And it's like, this movie's awesome. And so he was just always like a steady hand, just like always in good movies. And then, we did a whole episode on Nolan's Dark Knight movies, but when I was younger, of course, pre-Nolan, when Batman Forever came out, that was a big deal. Mm-hmm. Jim Carrey was on fire at that point, and so that movie coming out was a big deal. It had all the, I can remember getting like the McDonald's cups of Batman Forever, and Val Kilmer's the star, and I saw that movie like 3 times in the theater. I don't think it's really aged all that well, but that's not that important.
No, I mean, going back to the impressionable thing, when it came out, I thought it was awesome.
Oh yeah, I did too. It was a big deal. And then, like we've talked about, like Ghost in the Darkness is just a cool movie. Mm-hmm. And then there's some, he's like the Island of Dr. Moreau. Like his career was kind of up and down, unfortunately. He's in Heat. I'm a big Heat guy. So like always just like, man, cool, Val Kilmer. And then, for whatever reason, he fades away for a while. And he just wasn't, I mean, I hate to say this, but, in like the later 90s and especially in the 2000s, he just wasn't on my mind a whole lot because he wasn't doing a lot of high profile newer stuff. But then he just, no pun intended, he lands the plane on his career by being in Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, that was just a great thing to have. And I think everybody seeing that movie, I should say everybody who was old enough.
I think everyone did see that movie.
Well, everybody who was old enough to have any connection to the original, there was a lot of catharsis to seeing him come back and kind of have that. It was like closure for fans.
It really was. And you talk about getting emotional. Like I didn't cry watching it, but I was like, oh man, like this is like a real moment because there was some, I think, realness to that of, there was no secret Val Kilmer was not in good health. He couldn't talk for Top Gun Maverick. They had to use some kind of technology, I think, to simulate his voice. And that stuff with him and Cruise just felt real. And Val Kilmer gives like an amazing, 4-minute performance in Top Gun without even speaking.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, this is awesome. And then, that ends up being really the final time we see him, in the mainstream and up on screen. And it is a cool way for it to end, career-wise for him.
Yeah. Obviously, want to keep it positive here. So we're not going to litigate what went wrong in his career, but it's kind of known. He's almost a little bit of a cautionary tale of a guy who blew up really fast, and you could say he didn't handle it well or something, but he was,
I would always heard he was difficult to work with.
And the project started going away, and somebody who got big seemingly really fast.
Yeah.
Although, like you said, you can go back and say, well, early movies, like you were saying, Top Secret and
Real Genius.
Yeah. And there was, I'm sure in his mind, a slow build to it. But like you're saying, between Tombstone, Ghost in the Darkness, Batman Forever and Heat were the same year. I mean, it was like, this dude was the biggest guy, and it disappeared very quickly after that.
And I'm like you, I won't dwell on negative. I always had kind of heard, and it kind of seemed like he was maybe just a little different, kind of a strange guy.
I also think, I watched like a lot of what I think now is informed by, I watched that documentary about him, Val, that came out just a couple years, which was really good. Mm-hmm. And you watch it and you go like, I think big part of it is this dude was an artsy guy, right?
Very artsy.
He's an artist, and I think it was weird for him to be the movie star. I don't think he did well with I'm the star and I'm going to play the typical leading man roles. Mm-hmm. And I think he struggled with that. You hear it a lot of times more with like bands and stuff. Bands that can't handle being super big. Yeah,
you're right.
We don't want to be the arena
like
band. We want to be the club band, and play to like the genuine fans and stuff. But I I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of my read on it. But
I would agree with that completely.
But yeah, so I certainly don't mean to minimize the other roles by saying like the Doc Holliday one is just so impactful.
No,
it overshadows the other ones.
I think a lot of people would agree that's his best role.
So like when he passed, and I was like, I got to put something on social media, just like RP my guy, you know. And I started to pull pictures from a couple of my favorite movies of his, because there's others that are very impactful. Willow, you mentioned, was one that was hugely impactful to me, and that's one that was so funny to me because it took years before I realized that was the same guy as a kid. And when I realized it was the same guy, I was like, oh my gosh, the guy I love in this movie and this movie are the same guy.
Yeah.
Now I really love this guy. So like him as Mad Mardigan in Willow was huge for me. I am a huge Ghost in the Darkness fan, more so than most people, probably in part because A, like I said, Val is my guy at that point, and two, I just think it's an underrated movie.
It's a cool movie. I also saw it in the theater.
And yeah, I didn't, and that irks me. But also I've said this, I think, before when I was talking about Val Kilmer, is I think Val Kilmer in that movie was my vision of like, that's the coolest somebody can look. The end of the movie when he's like caked in mud and blood and his hair's up and he's going after the lion. And I'm like, that's the epitome of cool. That's what I want to look like when I'm older. I don't. I'm a little chubbier than he was and not quite as cool. But so like that impression of he was so different in all those things too. But then ultimately when I went to go post, I was like, you know what? Like, as much as I love those other performances and Heat, I was, pulling a clip from Heat because that was also a great movie. That's kind of like his most respected movie, maybe. I
would say so. The Doors, maybe.
Yeah, that's probably true. But as I was doing that, I was like, no, this is one where it's like, it's just Doc Holliday. I'm scrapping all the other performances, as meaningful as they were, because Doc's the like central. Like I said,
I agree
if I make my list, I put him, I think, at number one for my favorite performances of all time.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a cool list to have. I've never should give that more thought.
Yeah. I did it at one point years ago, made like my favorite movie characters. I didn't say performance, I just said my favorite movie characters. And when I made the list, I actually put him at number 2. And like, as soon as I did it, I was like, hey, he should have been number 1. And I look back at it now and go like, I shouldn't have. I put Tyler Durden at number 1, but that's probably more just recency bias when I made the list. And anyways, young angsty teen love Tyler Durden. Get older and you're like, Doc aged better than Tyler Durden did. I still think Tyler Durden's a great movie character, but it's just different.
I would agree with you. I think Doc is his best.
Yeah.
And he's so like, I don't know. You don't think of, sometimes you think of, or you don't associate actors with like their physicality and stuff, but he just, especially in Tombstone, like even just that picture you put up, like he just has the presence, and he is so convincing, I guess is the right word in Tombstone. Like
it's a part that the choices he made, I can very easily picture just going so wrong. Like he's doing the real like Southern gentleman-y thing, like the way he talks, his line deliveries, and you're sitting there going like, this could be really bad. I mean, there's, as much as I had that movie memorized as a kid, some of his lines were the ones that I was the most unsure about. It's like, I know the sounds sort of coming out of his mouth, but I'm not even really sure what words he's saying, because he's saying these like older expressions that I'm not really sure what they even mean.
Right.
But he just, like I said, he somehow embodies them so cool.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not just him. It's everybody in that movie being very great in their parts. And then Wyatt Earp, the movie coming out later with Kevin Costner. And I'm trying to remember who played Doc Holliday in that one. Was it...
is it Michael Madsen? Michael Madsen's in it.
Was it Dennis Quaid, maybe?
You might be right, yeah.
But anyways, whoever it was probably fine. But everyone's just like...
Nothing.
Get out of here.
You're not Val Kilmer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Val already did this, and he crushed it.
Yeah.
One thing I will do a little bit, that's not positive, but it's positive towards Val, is I'm gonna chide the Academy a little bit, because not only did Val Kilmer not get a nomination for Tombstone, which I definitely think he should have.
Tombstone didn't get anything.
Tombstone didn't. Val Kilmer was never nominated for anything.
He wasn't nominated for The Doors?
He wasn't.
That's wild.
And again, you could go through his career and see like it wasn't as long as you would think. There wasn't so many movies in there that you would expect to get Oscar nominations. So I'm not like he was snubbed a whole bunch of times. But for somebody, again, who had a good run like that to look at and was respected and go like, oh man, he never got anything, not even a like supporting for Heat or anything.
I was going to say, I would argue, and I'll say this, like, I'm not the biggest fan of The Doors, because I really don't have any kind of connection to Jim Morrison.
Yeah.
But that's an amazing performance.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of stuff the Academy usually loves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that, and then, like you said, a supporting in Heat were his two best chances.
Yeah. I think, again, if we use the Bill Simmons 5-year waiting period thing,
he gets
I bet you people for even Tombstone might have said, because Tombstone, when it comes out, I get it. It wasn't critically beloved.
Right.
It's a little bit of a mess. I can recognize that as I'm older. Like watching it today, I'm like, does it affect my love of it at all? But no, but I can see
it was a messy shoot.
It was a messy
Kurt
shoot.
Russell basically took over directing, I think, because it was messy. But
and so as an adult, and as I'm watching this, I can see the flaws. So I get why it wasn't critically acclaimed, but his performance is so good and I think so beloved that I think at 5-year waiting period, people might have said we could recognize him for it.
Yeah.
So here were the nominees for Best Supporting Actor.
Good. I can't wait to hear this.
And I'll preface it with this. Looking at it, I go, okay, well, it wasn't one of those years where it was just a bunch of bad nominees that I go, this is easy to figure out who to kick out.
Yeah.
But I still say he would have been my favorite before. So the winner was Tommy Lee Jones for The Fugitive. That was a great supporting performance.
That's an
I'll
awesome
give you
supporting
that.
performance. It really is.
That's one I'm not mad about his win.
Yeah.
If it wasn't going, if I wasn't comparing it to my all-time favorite performance.
Right. Surely someone from Schindler's List is on there.
Yes. So Ray Fiennes from Schindler's List.
Yeah.
A young Leonardo DiCaprio for What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Good call.
He was really good in that. John Malkovich in The Line of Fire. That's one that he's good, but
I don't hate it.
Yeah,
I don't hate it.
I don't know. It's just I think that's the one that I go if you're gonna do that one, it makes me feel like you could have gone Kilmer.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Sure,
I
absolutely.
get you're not gonna go when you're looking at Schindler's List, you're not gonna go well, but Tombstone, and then Pete Postlethwaite for In the Name of the Father.
Yeah,
and
you got to have
I like
some
Pete, but I don't even know what that movie is.
I don't know. Yeah,
So,
give me the first 4 are good.
Yeah,
and then if you add Val Kilmer to that, that's a great year for supporting actor.
Yeah, and unfortunately, just didn't happen.
That's
so
too
it never
bad
happened for him.
Did you by chance do 95 supporting actor?
I didn't. I can look that up really.
I was just curious.
Though.
Man, you think you could have worked him in from Heat, but I know that's also the year where Pesci for Casino got no love. Just one of those years. So
I guess technically it's the 96 kind of
96
awards, right?
Oscars.
That's what I gotta look at. So the supporting roles that year, the winner was Kevin Spacey for Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
James Cromwell for Babe. I'll allow it.
Yeah.
James Cromwell is really good in Babe.
James Cromwell is good.
That is a shockingly good movie for being a kid's family movie. Ed Harris for Apollo 13. One I'm definitely not mad about, Brad Pitt, 12 Monkeys, and then Tim Roth for Rob Roy.
Yeah, I don't really remember that too much. But
I'd probably get rid of Tim Roth.
I probably would too. I like Tim Roth, but give me Val Kilmer from Heat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm shocked. I thought for sure he was at least nominated for The Doors. But yeah, that's a bummer. Never got the nomination.
Yeah. He did get nominated for 3 Razzies. That's a little bit disappointing.
That's disappointing.
We don't have to discuss those. But his Razzie nominations were for
The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Worst supporting actor for Dr. Moreau, worst supporting actor for is it Alexander? Is that the name of the movie?
Yeah.
The one I know it's about Alexander the Great.
Yeah, with Colin Farrell.
Yeah, and then nominated for worst actor for The Saint. Which
I do have a confession to make. I did go see The Saint, and I think I walked out. I think I left it because I was like 17 at the time, and I was just bored to death. Yeah. Was that? I wonder if The Saint was that Hollywood trying to send Val Kilmer to the A-list for good? Because I remember that poster is just Val Kilmer's face.
Yeah,
and it was that was it wasn't I think it came out in April of 97, and it was kind of a high profile movie, and I just don't think it worked. I wonder if that was their attempt to.
Yeah, I think so. First off, I'll say this: I think that's a terrible Razzie nomination because is the movie great? No, but I don't watch that and go, boy, Kilmer was
it's just not a good movie.
Okay, but my thought is it came out not long after Mission Impossible. It was also a TV show. And so I bet the studio was here's another TV show with spy kind of stuff, and we'll throw another star in it. We gave Cruise Mission Impossible. We'll give Kilmer
and
the Saint.
Maybe it was just too soon after Mission Impossible.
Well, and it just wasn't.
It wasn't up to that level.
Yeah, like it. I don't know if it was just the source material didn't lend itself to that same level, or if the writer they got just didn't pull it off. But that would be my guess is that they were trying to duplicate that.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. Yeah.
What do you think his height was? Like, to me, it's got to be Batman Forever and Heat in the same year.
95.
95. That's really impressive.
And, I mean, that kind of leads into, I think the next year is Dr. Moreau. And
it just really
that was the one where you really heard about because that one was a nightmare shoot,
and Brando was off the rails.
There's a documentary about the shoot that's more interesting than the movie itself,
and it was one of those movies that unfortunately like people were just laughing at it. Like it was just really a dud. And
so you mentioned it. Brando was known to be off the rails, but there was also reported there was kind of an ego contest between Kilmer and Brando. Like they were both saying like I'm not coming to the set till that other guy does. In other words, like I'm not gonna be the one waiting on the other guy. And so like production would just halt while those two would just sit in their trailers refusing to come to set first. And you hear stuff like that and it's like, that's, that cautionary thing I'm talking about where
just
like
don't let it go to your head.
Goes to your head and you don't handle it well. And so that movie was a bomb in every way and lost a lot of money. And it was, you go from the year of Batman Return or Batman Forever and Heat to that.
And then he never bounced back.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like I said, I mean, because we're being positive, to have Batman Forever and Heat in the same year is really impressive. And, in Batman Forever, he's, of course, Bruce Wayne and Batman and, short hair and suit and everything. And Heat, he's got like he's got a ponytail and going like this. Like, he's very different. So, and even like, what's Tombstone? 93. Mm-hmm. So, 93 to 95, I mean, that dude was kind of a chameleon. I mean, he could really immerse himself in a role and be very different.
Yeah, that's people. I've heard people say of like Brad Pitt, he's a character actor stuck in a leading man's body, and I think that's sort of the same with Val Kilmer. I think he's a guy who just wanted to be an actor, and was a little too high maintenance in that regard. But I think he also he obviously didn't mind trying to take the big Hollywood movies,
right?
But one thing I do like about him too is that, as we start going past the 90s, he kept working, but was in a lot of just kind of schlock that I didn't really pay attention to. But he pops up again in a movie like MacGruber. Mm-hmm. And MacGruber is this, it's so dumb that it's kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
And he's playing the villain in the movie.
Yeah.
And you're like, the thing I love about it is, here's a guy whose reputation is, I take myself so seriously, I'm hard to work with. And then he plays this part, and it's kind of reassuring as someone who's a fan, like, hey, like this.
He must have had a little bit of sense of humor.
Yeah, some of it's probably overblown, his reputation. Yeah, like this guy can laugh and make fun of himself.
Because there's not a much more ridiculous movie than MacGruber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is like, I would never tell someone, watch it, it's good, because
it's insane.
It's so dumb. I could see anyone watching going like, what am I, like, why are we watching this?
Yeah.
But, it kind of beats you over there with the dumbness to the point that you just start laughing.
You have no choice,
So I love that. And then I have to admit, there's a big hole in my filmography for Kilmer because he was in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which has a lot of fans. It's a kind of cult hit. And for whatever reason, it just got by me, and I've never watched it. And I need to go back and watch it.
It's a cool movie.
Yeah,
it's a cool movie.
Because I like Shane Black.
Shane Black
wrote and directed that.
Yeah.
It's got Downey
Downey's
Jr.
in it.
It was kind of
Downey's cooking in that movie.
Yeah,
that's
Kilmer and Downey were both not a
this was this is pre Iron Man, and it's actually a kind of an important movie because that's when people were like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot Downey's awesome.
Yeah,
and then things were all uphill from there.
Yeah, and I think that Kilmer, in some ways, had a little bit of again, trying to stay positive, and this is going to sound mean. He had a little bit of the Brandon Fraser issue. Like, I think he obviously younger had this great leading man look, and as he got older, like,
let himself go a little bit.
Kind of got really big. Yeah, like he he pulled a Brando. We'll put it that way,
Yeah.
And so you watch him in something like that, and you go, he doesn't look like the leading man as much anymore.
Right.
He's still a good actor, he's still talented. But maybe that's also why the part started going away.
It could be. I think if had his health allowed and everything, and if he was still going like in this current era or even the last several years, you think there would have been some kind of like prestige TV or something he probably would have found his way to. I bet.
Yeah, I'm sure of it.
I am so happy though that like I said, and I don't mean to be repetitive, but like his last on-screen thing is that Top Gun Maverick. Yeah, like they handled that so well, and then the way they were able to work his actual real life illness into it was really well done, and it's a really high note for him to end on film career wise.
Absolutely. So yeah, I don't have much more to say. I knew this was going to be a short episode because
we did this when Carl Weathers died. We just kind of hopped on and did like a 20-25 minute.
Just wanted to sing the praises of somebody who was important in our lives. And I mean, as you can see, I'm wearing the Doc Holliday t-shirt.
Great shirt. It's always cool when you can, become, as a movie star, when you can just get to the point where you have that, you have that cachet with movie fans, where it'd be like you just see Kilmer, like, oh, Kilmer.
Yeah.
Like even if the movie didn't pan out or whatever, I just always threw out like I said, there was a time where my interest wasn't very high in him because he had kind of faded away. But then if I saw something, it was like, oh, Kilmer, cool. Yeah. Like it was never like, oh, Val Kilmer's in this movie. Like he always, is always like, oh, good to see Kilmer up on screen.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about, and sorry, I didn't prepare you for this. We didn't prepare anything for this because this is, sort of an off the cuff podcast. But when, I saw the announcement that he died, I told you like it kind of hit me disproportionately, larger than I would expect and you would think. And I was thinking about it like there are people like that everybody has. I think that you don't know that, your relationship is, their work, that sort of thing.
Right.
But it's important to you in a way that like you have an emotional connection. I had this a year ago. Tim Keller, who was a pastor in New York, but wrote a bunch of books. He passed away from cancer, and he's probably one of the most important people in my life spiritually, has really shaped my life. And when he passed, it was very emotional for me. And I was like, I've never met the guy, I don't know.
Right.
I actually shed some tears.
But he played a big role in my life.
And I was thinking there are people like that in kind of every venue of things that I care about, so like the basketball version of this would be Larry Bird, who's someone that I grew up with posters of him in my room. He was the first basketball player that I was a huge fan of. And when one day when Larry Bird passes away, that's going to be an emotional hit for me. And I was thinking, who are the other people in the movie business that's like this? And for the most part, it is people that the connection comes from when we're younger. Like we talk about when you're really impressionable, that's where it comes from. And I was thinking, probably maybe the next biggest one would be like Sandler, because again, those teenage years when you're so formative, he was the guy that was so big in my life. I'll probably feel this way when, say, like Aaron Sorkin passes away, because I've really enjoyed all the things he's written for so long. And then I was thinking about also Stallone. When Rocky passes away, that's going to be a big deal. Yeah. I don't know if there's any guys that you could think of off the top of your head, because again, I didn't give you a chance to think about this.
The very first names that popped into my head were Stallone and Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Just because you grow up with these guys. And, we've talked about it. In the 80s, when you were an action star, you were larger than life.
Yeah.
And it's like you feel like it pains me a little bit even just to see Stallone and Schwarzenegger. Not that they're doing bad, but just like they're old now. And it's like, man, when I was younger, like, I talk about Commando on here all the time, or a lot of times. I would watch Commando, and it was like Arnold A is the coolest person ever. He's like a literal, real life superhero. And also, too, it's the era, like I've said on here before, where, of course, there was no social media. So when you got to see these guys in a movie, it felt like such a treat. It's not like now where I can, get on, I always pick on The Rock. Like I can get on Instagram and I can follow The Rock because he constantly, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's like, it felt like these guys were just, it was just such a treat to even see them, see them on a screen. And so, when those guys that I grew up with start to pass away one of these days, that'll just be a real, and like you said, Rocky,
yeah,
that'll be a bummer. Yeah. You like you said, that's the cool thing about being a movie fan, though. It's like you, of course, don't know these people, but you just you've been watching their stuff for years and years and years. Or like a big one for me would be Scorsese. And he is an old man. I mean, he's the guy that was like, his movies, helped me realize that I love movies. Spielberg, these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, when you love movies like us, it's because you emotionally invest, and when you emotionally invest in things, there's times that those emotions are going to be,
absolutely,
you're going to feel the pain.
But like you said, thank goodness, that they were in the movie business, and it'll live for, these performances and these clips, and when I went to YouTube and Val Kilmer after he passed away, the very first thing that popped up was Tombstone.
Yeah,
a clip from Tombstone. So it's like, it's cool that it lives forever. And then you go back and you kind of reevaluate some of their stuff now that they're gone. You're like, you know what? He was good.
Yeah. I'm just so very happy that there's so many things, you love in childhood that just don't hold up, that you watch when you're older and you're like, just doesn't have the same effect. And it was just really like a treat today I went home, made a thing of popcorn, had my M&Ms. It's like, I'm moving it up right now and watching Tombstone. I was just like, I love this as much as ever. I appreciate it for probably different ways than I did when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But just as much as ever. And I go like, this is just still an all-time performance that I love, that everybody kind of universally loves.
Yeah.
I love that I could tell anybody, like, go watch Tombstone. You're going to, and when they watch it, I know when I see him, I'll be like, Kilmer is Holliday, right? And they'll be like, yes.
Oh yeah. It's got a high approval rating for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us to let me pour out my heart a little bit.
I'm glad you got to.
About Val. And if you haven't seen Tombstone,
go watch it.
Go watch Tombstone.
It's worth it. Yeah. It's so worth it. It's a cool movie no matter what, and Kilmer's just awesome in it. So.
Yeah. And then when you're done with that, keep going down the rabbit hole. Watch Willow, watch Ghost in the Darkness, watch Heat, watch Real Genius and Top Secret.
They're ridiculous, but they're really fun.
Watch Top Gun and then Top Gun Maverick. It'll be the good cap to
That'll be a great cap.
Your movie watching stretch.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yep.
We'll see you in just a few days.
Absolutely.